Hello, Bio 130 students. We are now going to do the final video lesson for the digestive system, but as a quick recap of what was discussed in the first video lesson, the digestive system consists of hollow organs. These are the organs connected to each other in a continuous chain from the mouth to the large intestine, where the material that we ingest, that we swallow, will travel through these organs. And then there are also the accessory organs, the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, which, while food will not travel directly through them, these accessory organs will add assistance by pumping in enzymes and other chemical compounds to help further digestion. We discussed enzymatic functional pH, which is essentially how the enzymes that help break apart the food material that we eat, they need to occur, and they will only be functional or active at certain pH, like pepsin in the stomach needs to occur at acidic pH in order to break down proteins. Or the enzymes of the small intestine, they need to be in a basic environment in order to be active, which is why it's good that the pancreas delivers sodium bicarbonate into the small intestine to help neutralize the stomach acid. Also discussed was that major nutritional absorption begins in the small intestine, whereas in the stomach and the mouth, only digestion was occurring, as opposed to absorption of any kind. Something to know is that where each macronutrient, carbs, proteins, fats, where each of those are digested and absorbed. You can think of it as this: a little bit of carbohydrate, which is a little bit of starch in this case, gets digested in the mouth. Protein digestion starts in the stomach, and then all those components get digested even further in the small intestine, namely the duodenum, which is also where fat digestion begins. And then throughout the small intestine, especially in the jejunum, these components get absorbed. Now, getting into the last major hollow organ of the digestive system is the large intestine, which, similar to the small intestine, is broken up into different regions, which aren't actually distinguishable per se if you were to stretch out the large intestine straight across. But essentially, these different distinctions can be seen through the different bends the large intestine takes. Once food travels through from the ileum of the small intestine into the large intestine, it will begin traveling through peristalsis. It will begin traveling up the ascending colon, and then it will travel across through the transverse colon, traveling downward through the descending colon, and then finally it will travel through the sigmoid colon. After the sigmoid colon, that's where what will be excreted as waste will enter through the rectum. Something to note is that at the beginning of the large intestine is a part called the cecum, and a little dangly bit hanging off of the cecum is the appendix. As far as what the large intestine contributes to digestion and absorption, nothing is really being digested anymore. Your body isn't directly digesting anything anymore, but it is doing a lot of absorption through the large intestine. Well, let me backtrack again. Most of the absorption and digestion concludes in the small intestine. In the large intestine, essentially what you're going to be absorbing is water. If you can remember that, water is absorbed in the small intestine. That's the main function of the large intestine. Now, the large intestine also houses gut bacteria. These gut bacteria, they help process material that you as a human were not able to digest. And these gut bacteria digest some of that indigestible material, converting it into vitamins, which are then absorbed by the large intestine. And then the last major function is to simply transport waste material that was not could not be digested nor absorbed, as well as waste products from the body, so that it can be excreted past the rectum. Now, this will be the start of a couple of diseases, since in this basic anatomy course, not only will we cover some of the basic anatomy of what is occurring and some of the chemistry of what is occurring in these major body systems, we'll also, in some cases, get into diseases and disorders for certain body systems, and sometimes get into different medical techniques that are done to analyze these problems. For the digestive system, one disorder that will be talked about is lactose intolerance. This lactose intolerance arises from your body not being able to produce lactase, which is the enzyme that digests lactose sugars in the small intestine. What happens after failing to digest lactose is that lactose in the chyme will enter the large intestine. Their gut bacteria will essentially ferment those sugars, causing gas to form. One of those gases being hydrogen gas. Now, thanks to gas forming in the intestine, this can cause abdominal cramps, painful bloating, diarrhea, and, well, gas, of course, flatulence. A very simple diagnosis of lactose intolerance after you have taken, say, milk or some kind of source of lactose is actually the hydrogen breath test, where hydrogen can actually be sensed in your breath due to it being produced all the way in your intestines from gut bacteria. As far as prevalence, or how often lactose intolerance occurs, generally most mammals, as they age, they naturally will lose their tolerance to lactose or their ability to properly digest lactose. But in the case of humans, there is this odd situation where in certain parts of the world, certain populations of people were able to maintain the ability to digest lactose into adulthood. There were past theories that if you kept drinking milk, you would keep your ability to digest lactose. That has been mostly discredited. Turns out you actually have genes in your body that will allow you to, if you have those genes, allow you to break apart lactose and digest it effectively. And most people, it turns out that those genes get shut off as you grow older. Whereas in a few of the people in the world, those genes do not get shut off, which is a big plus if you enjoy milk from cows. Another common disease that will plague the digestive system is diverticular disease. Essentially what happens is that as gas and or solid waste pushes against weakened portions of the intestinal walls, small pockets can form in those walls. Those small pockets are called diverticula. And essentially what is caused is diverticulosis. As more diverticula form, more serious complications can arise. Diverticular or rectal bleeding. This is a problem this is due to chronic injury of the blood vessels surrounding diverticula. So as those pouches form, blood vessels can get damaged, causing diverticular bleeding or rectal bleeding. Also, diverticulitis, also called diverticular infection, occurs where those pockets can become packed with waste, where bacteria can build up. And as that bacteria builds up, it can cause inflammation of those diverticula pouches, and with inflammation cause infection. So the formation of diverticula, or the formation of those pouches, is called diverticulosis. Diverticulitis would be the inflammation of those pouches, causing diverticular bleeding or diverticulitis because of waste getting stuck and bacteria growing. A common and very life-saving procedure to diagnose diverticular disease is a colonoscopy, which becomes more and more important to get as people get older. The prevalence of this disease, or these series of diseases, will increase. They increase with age. They become more common as people get older. Now, they are commonly found in 10% of adults who are over the age of 40. And then within 20 years, over 50% of the population above the age of 60 will have some form of diverticular disease. Now, that essentially concludes our video lessons in the digestive system, where we covered the major hollow organs and accessory organs, discussed the importance of pH environment so that enzymes can actually be functional, where we discussed 2 diseases and disorders that can affect the digestive system, namely lactose intolerance or diverticular disease, which could result into diverticulosis, diverticulitis, diverticular bleeding. As a discussion activity, go into the appropriate discussion forum and make a thread to discuss the material in this particular video lesson, or you can even mention material discussed in the previous video lesson. You are also welcome to discuss digestive diseases or disorders that were not mentioned in this lesson to give your classmates an opportunity to hear further. For example, you may have or know someone who had experience with appendicitis, Crohn's disease, or perhaps something else. Once you make a thread, you will also be responsible for replying to another of your classmates' threads, remarking on their insights, what you got from their posts, what you might add, what you could expand upon, or again, just simply what you got from their perspective. So just slightly between the 14.5 and 15-minute mark, it is a pleasure to have discussed the digestive system with you students in this very first iteration of Bio 130 through distance education. Looking forward to discussing the next video lesson for you all.